All right, fantastic. Hello, hello. Those of you joining us here, amazing. Hey, you can have videos on. We love being able to see you all. You are muted for today, though, but if you can have video on, it's great to see you. Look, honestly, excited to be here. We have an amazing webinar planned, and we're going to be diving into some really amazing things. Just as we gather, we'd love you to add in the chat where you are, right? Where you are in the world, and also what you do, right? Where you are and what you do creatively, right? So pop that in the chat just as we gather, and we've got some more people joining us as well, which is fantastic. We're going to get underway very soon. Now, those of you that don't know me, I am actually from New Zealand. That's where the accent is. And I happen to be in New Zealand right now. I spend most of my time in the US, but actually right now I happen to be here for a few weeks. So the confusing thing about that for everyone, including me, is that it's actually Friday here in New Zealand. It's Friday morning. We're like a day ahead, so it's always a bit strange every time I think about that, with the timing of New Zealand kind of starting the day there, which is kind of crazy. So yeah, just if you've joined us, pop in the chat where you are in the world and what you do before we get underway very soon. So it's great seeing where everyone is. Kathleen, where are you at the moment?
I'm in Portland. I'm at home. I just got back from Colorado, but on the West Coast right now.
Amazing, I love that. And Molly?
I am at home as well in Minneapolis. I see a couple of other Minneapolis faces on the call, so that's fun.
Amazing. I love that. And yeah, everyone's sharing where they are. So we've got people all over. Amazing. Fiona, Toronto. I love that. Minneapolis. Amazing. Hey, Audrey. Kate. Yep. I love that. Chattanooga. Amazing. Cleveland. Hey, Christine. Mary. LA. Amazing. So many amazing things that people do creatively as well. Hey, Kyrene. Amazing. Long Island, Hannah. Great. Kansas City. There we go. Hey, Tanner. Amazing. Keisha, amazing. Dayton, Ohio, nice. Minneapolis. Hey, this is so good. I always love seeing where people are. And of course, we've got, people in lots of different time zones across primarily the US here and Canada as well, which is fantastic. So I love that. And awesome hearing what people are up to and the awesome things that people are doing. I know we've got people here that I've already spoken to as well, which is lovely to see you all. I recognize lots of names. And we've got one of our clients here as well, which is fantastic. Hey, Christine. Too. And look, we're going to be running an awesome training today. So I will hand over to Molly so she can introduce herself and into it. So over to you, Molly.
Cool. Thanks, Logan. My name is Molly. I'm in Minneapolis. I am Made by Molly Joe on Instagram, if any of you have seen me there. I'm a muralist and illustrator. I primarily do murals. It's probably like 80% murals right now. And I am just about to celebrate 6 years of full-time in business. And I started working with Logan when I was like a few years into business. And yeah, he really helped me kind of shift into getting to where I want to be today with doing mostly murals and really thriving with that. Last year was my first year hitting 6 figures with my business, which was a big goal of mine when I was working with Logan, and I'm on track to hit it again. So I'm really excited for that.
Amazing. I love that. We'll get Kathleen, we'll get you to do an intro as well. Over to you.
Yeah. I'm Kathleen. I'm an independent illustrator and graphic designer based in Portland, Oregon. I was working in advertising when I met Logan through a call and a survey, a lot like this one. And I was at the point where I was considering making freelance a bigger part of my life. And I really appreciated Logan's experience with creatives and his outlook and approach to business as a whole. And since I had zero business knowledge at the time, I knew I needed kind of the education and support of someone who knew what they were doing. So he really helped me leave my day job within that first year of starting to pursue it. And I've built up from making a few $100s here and there to making consistently 6 figures per year for the last 3 years of my business. So a little more kind of intro Logan. He works with creatives just like us all over the world. He has a master's in entrepreneurship and was the owner of his own creative business for 11 years. So he's been there and he has the perspective of a successful creative person, which was what really kind of I was looking for in a coach for sure. And he's worked with hundreds of designers, illustrators, muralists. So he kind of really understands the visual creative journey. And he uses that knowledge and experience that he has to help build their creative careers. I know he's helped a lot of people, including me, quit their day job, which is what I hear everyone say they want to do, but not just help them get by. He's helped people get up to making 5-figure months a regular occurrence and 6-figure years like a total reality. So I'm really excited to be here today with him and Molly to talk about one of the biggest things Logan really helped me learn and come into, which is networking. So I'll throw it to Logan to intro that.
Amazing. I love that. Thank you so much, Kathleen and Molly. It's great. Like it's so good to be here with a group of people who get the challenges of the creative side and the business side, right? And everyone here, I'm sure, can relate, is that this is the biggest challenge that we really see, is that there's these talented, amazing, creative people. They're so good at their craft, but the business stuff gets in the way. Right, it's not natural, it's not normal, it feels pushy, it feels salesy, marketing, those things are big things that can come up from people. And, this is something I'm incredibly passionate about, and we're going to be diving into, a core topic around this today, which is networking. That's something that a lot of people struggle with, and both Molly and Kathleen have such great perspectives on this in terms of, how they've really utilized it in their business as well. So we'll be diving in soon. Kathleen's re-introed me, so I'll just add a couple of quick things to that. As I mentioned, I'm from New Zealand. I think everyone's clear on the accent, and some people go, well, where is that accent from? Is it UK? Is it Australia? But New Zealand is where I'm originally from. So I don't spend too much time here these days. We're a US business, and most of our clients are in the US. But I do come back and visit family occasionally. So as I said, it's a little bit strange because it's actually my Friday morning here today. I think for most of you, it'll be kind of Thursday afternoon, evening, etc. So there we go. Look, the people that we work with, just give a really quick background. As Kathleen mentioned, we work with visual creatives, so very much people who are illustrators, graphic designers, muralists is really our core area. People we tend to work with kind of break into 3 groups. Group 1 are like early stage, where Kathleen was at, have a day job often, or some of them are stay-at-home parents, and they really want to get this thing working. Maybe they've done, the odd piece of work here and there, the odd sort of paid work, but they really want to turn this into, a proper functioning business. They really want to make it work. They ideally want to leave their day job and, really go full time. So that's group 1. Group 2 are probably a bit more like where Molly was when we started working together, is that you've been doing this for a bit longer. You're effectively already full time in the business, but, wanted to make sure it was long-term sustainable, increase that revenue, get more clients, do more of the work that you love as well. And, the business stuff really getting in the way of doing that. That's group 2. We do also work with another group, and that's basically people who have been in business for a very long time, sometimes 10 or even 20 years. And, similar challenges exist, is that, they really need to, really get that business side a lot more down packed. They want to increase revenue. They want to get more balance. They want to diversify what they're doing in terms of their offerings as well. So, everyone has a different story, and I've described 3 groups. I'm sure everyone here fits into one of those groups or somewhere between. Right? Because of course, everyone's an individual. So sometimes it's like, no, like this person we work with has a part-time job, but they're also a parent and their situation is this. So everyone's different and has their own story. But the thing that really, drives the people that we work with is that they want to see change in their lives, personally and professionally, and really grow this business and really make it work, doing the work that they love as well. So one of the really cool things we're going to be doing today is we're going to be giving away 3 freebie coaching calls with me, and also a bunch of extra 15-minute calls with Paul from my team. Paul is amazing. He's our creative business specialist on my team. He's great to get on a call with as well. So what we will do is we will basically be selecting 3 people, either on live or watching the recording, to do that. What we do have, and I'll just drop the link in the chat. If that's something that's exciting for you, pop that link open now. We will drop that link in the email as well afterwards that we'll send out the recording with. But fill that in. This is the survey that you fill in. Honestly, even if you don't want to call, it's fascinating to fill in. You'll find out some really interesting stuff as well. As Kathleen said, that's actually how we connected with Kathleen originally. It was through a webinar a bit like this. And then Kathleen ended up filling that in, and here we are today. So look, we'd love to connect with a whole bunch of you. So we'll pick basically 3 people that fill that in to get on calls with me, 30-minute coaching calls, and then we'll basically put a bunch more on calls with Paul from my team as well, which will be fantastic. So that there is what we'll be doing. We'll send it out afterwards, but do pop that open now. Don't do it now because you'll want to focus on the actual training, but feel free to do that straight after the call. Look, we're going to be diving some really interesting stuff today around networking. And I think networking, I think it's kind of a bit like the word sales or the word marketing. It's like, it can be quite like, oh, networking, like that does not sound fun. And, part of what we really want to do today is to help shift your views of what networking is and how that can actually work for you. And we're going to be, really diving into these different areas of that and helping you understand that, like, it's not just something that's hard and scary. It can actually be done within your comfort zone or slightly out of your comfort zone, but also it's something that is incredibly powerful for the long-term sustainability of your business as well. Networking is really just about connecting. It's just really about connecting with people. And, that's the way I think about marketing in general. Technically, networking is just a type of marketing, but actually marketing is just really connecting with people. Right? That's all it really is. I think we kind of put these things on a pedestal and say like, oh, big scary things and, really difficult. And we imagine, someone that has to be like wearing a suit, probably at some networking event, shaking hands. Hello, nice to meet you, doing my business pitch, Dragon's Den style. Like it can be like that if you want it to be, but like there is so many different opportunities in networking to really connect with people as well. And actually, to be honest, that's part of what today is too. This is a networking opportunity for all of you here too. So we'll, at some point we'll get everyone to share their Instagram and get connected up with not just us, but also everyone on this call, because so much of networking is really about community building as well. So the first thing we're going to really dive into here is it's around tapping into your current community and really discovering how you can leverage your existing networks, right? For opportunities in your business. So I think this is kind of the best place to start with networking, but even with marketing in general, right? If you're not doing so much marketing wise, the best place to start is in your current network. So part of business is getting people to know, like, and trust you, or having, those things in place to actually work with them. You already have a whole lot of people that know, like, and trust you in your own current network. That could be, yes, friends and family. That's kind of the immediate people we think about. But also, what about past colleagues, someone you went to high school with, right? Someone you studied with. It could be people who know people that you know, right? So there's also those second degrees of connection as part of this as well. So, that existing network, they already trust you. They already know you. Now, I'm not saying necessarily that you're going to end up working with, family or friends, people that need things in those realms. Right? It could be family and friends are like, wow, yes, I need a designer, creator to do this thing here. It's more often actually the people that are going to be connected with them, right? Or it's going to be people that, you're not as connected with, but you know them. They're sort of in your realm. They're those previous contacts, someone you worked with previously, things like that. So, it's really important to recognize you already know a whole big group of people through life, right? This doesn't need to be related to business at all. And they could be your next client, or they could know your next client. I kind of think about marketing in general as like sometimes being a bit like a spider web, where you're kind of like adding these new webs all the time. And every time you strengthen a connection or you build a new connection, you're really adding to that web. And sometimes what you're doing is you're connecting to other people's webs, right? So it's like, hey, like if someone that you know is aware of what you do, they then become an advocate for you as well in their network, right? So if you, for example, reconnect with an old colleague, someone you haven't spoken to for a few years, well, if you're sharing what you're up to, you've suddenly opened yourself up to their network as well, right? Because you've kind of joined their spider web in a way too. And suddenly they might be recommending you. They might be saying to their friends, their family, their connections about what you do, particularly if there's someone that needs something as well. We hear about like, cold connections, right? So if we talk about like warm connections, is really like business wordy stuff. It's like warm connections are just people who are part of your current network, right? So they're always going to end up being, much easier to work with. First, they already know, like, and trust you. If we talk about cold connections are like people that do not know you right now. Never heard of you, don't know who you are, right? It's just harder. It's just harder to build business with and, build connections with people that are in that cold side. So yes, part of it is that you have to, and we're going to talk more about that of, connecting outside of your current realm, but also understanding it's always going to be easier to start with warm connections rather than the cold connection, right? So that's a very good thing to think about here as well. We often just see that this is a place where you can get so many great opportunities through the people you already know. And once again, it's not always them. It might be someone they know as well. right? So yes, that person is technically maybe a cold connection to you, but actually they're kind of a bit warm because this person that you know is probably going to be saying great things about you, right? This is a powerful thing that you have as well. So Kathleen, would love to hear your thoughts around this, your perspectives around this one as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is really, especially when I was first starting out, where I got almost all of my opportunities was through people I already knew. And I think when I was first talking to Logan and kind of expressing that, like, oh, like networking's a struggle for me, like sitting down and really looking at how many people I'd already met in my first like 27-ish years of life, and like how many people I'd met through school and the jobs that I'd had, and really like, identifying like, oh, I actually have this huge community already. And I think one of the biggest things to remember is that in general, people want to help you. Like they want to help people they know and trust, and they want to connect with and work with people that they know and trust, because on the other side, like hiring is just as difficult when it comes to, can I, connect with the right person? So I think that's a hurdle that can be hard to get over, I think, especially, when you're first starting out and you're like, oh, I don't want to bother these people, or, like, oh, this feels weird to ask them if I can, they can email connect me with this other person that I would like to get in touch with. But like, I mean, when I do that for other people, I feel great. I'm like, oh, I was able to connect this person with someone that could help them. And like, it feels good because I'm like, I like this person, I trust this person, and I want to help them further. So you don't have to be so afraid of shooting out that email. It's a lot less scary than like a cold email where you're having to like introduce yourself and all of that. You really just have to, connect with that person. And sometimes it helps if, before you really need to ask for something, you're checking in with them. I like to look for opportunities to kind of follow up with people I know, like, oh, did they just change jobs? Can I send them a congratulations? Or like, keeping in touch in small ways so that when I send that email saying like, hey, I'd really like to, work with you or work with someone that you know, or can you help me out here? It feels a little less weird because you've kind of been staying in touch with that person. So I try to kind of, that's, I guess I call it kind of like maintaining my network in that way, so that when you kind of jump and you're like, I'm asking for work or I'm asking for a referral, it's just like chatting with a friend. And those emails can be really short and easy to write when you don't have to, send a huge introduction or talk about what you're going to do. So, but yeah, I mean, anyone in your network can really be helpful, which I think is why it's important to just be confident in what you do and excited about what you do. So when you're having those conversations with friends and family, like you're putting your business foot forward a little bit too. So, yeah.
I love it. And I think, this is where, when, for everyone here, like when we're working with Kathleen, like this was such a big part, and is still such a big part of how Kathleen has grown her business, right? Is through these networks. It's always like, oh, where did you get this client? Oh, well, it's actually, through this person that I know, right? Or like, oh, it's actually this past colleague that I used to work with. Right. And, it's a much easier way to build a business. Obviously, it's not the only way, but this is such a powerful way, is through existing connections and really through the people that you know. Because as Kathleen mentioned, like you don't have to do the cold introduction. Now, we know that also part of businesses, you often do need to get into those cold introductions as well, but this is certainly a place to really focus first and to start and to keep nurturing as well. So, I love what Kathleen said there around nurturing, and we're gonna talk about that a little bit more as well in terms of your network too. So we're going to talk next about the comfort zone. So, it's really, the reality is, to grow your business, you're going to have to get out of your comfort zone, right? You're going to have to, push some boundaries to really connect with amazing people. Now, I think, one of the big things I say, in our coaching and our programs is like, we need to get you out of your comfort zone, but not too far, right? This is really important because like, if you just dive straight out to the, the big scary stuff and you go into a big scary in-person networking event, you're going to like, well, I'm not going to go, right? It's just not going to even happen. But how can we tiptoe into these things? How can we actually start the process of connecting and networking? So this is a very, very important piece of it, is when you're stepping outside of your comfort zone, you kind of need to do it by tiptoeing. I think about the comfort zone as a big circle. It's like, let's just stick a foot out, right? Let's stick a foot out of that bubble, that comfort zone. So, part of it is really understanding though, that it's normal to feel fear, right? Like getting out of the comfort zone. Yes, it's essential to grow the business, but it's also very normal for that to be uncomfortable, because you're going to be doing things that you probably haven't done before. You're going to be learning stuff that you don't really know about, right? So that's part of it as well. We know everyone we work with has to go through fear and challenges, and at times it can be challenging. And it's part of why we support them and coach them through this as well. But, it's just really helping you to see that you can't really grow a business from within your comfort zone. Yeah, you might be able to sustain a business potentially, but if you're wanting to actually take things forward and grow a business, you are going to probably have to learn some new things. You're going to have to get outside your comfort zone sometimes as well. So, expanding your network is really essential. And part of that is because you need enough of the right people to know you exist, right? This is a really important piece of business, is like having enough people knowing you exist and knowing and then being the right people. And this is actually the biggest challenge that we see most people having, is that essentially they're like, hey, I'm trying to offer this thing and no one seems to be that super interested, or the people I'm talking to right now don't really want to pay. They're like, oh my God, you're so expensive. And you're like, I feel like I need to raise my prices, right? Actually, what you need to do is you need to have more people knowing that you exist, because there's all these people out there in the world that just don't know about your work. So yes, it's more people knowing that you exist, but it's also about expanding that network and making sure they're the right people, right? So this is really, really important, is the right people who are willing to pay, who do value your work. So that's part of that comfort zone side as well. We've seen this a lot where, yes, we've got to balance that warm network. Sometimes what you need to do is connect to a wider network. And we're kind of going to dive into that more as well, of going, okay, well, how do you get beyond the current people you know as well? So we'll dive into that a little bit more. But in terms of comfort zone, Molly, I know this has been part of your journey as well. Like everyone, would love to hear some of your thoughts and experiences around, getting outside that comfort zone.
Yeah, I always love the way that you describe it, Logan, where you say like you should get out of your comfort zone, but just like a little tiptoe at a time. Like if this is your comfort zone, just try like right out here first, because then your comfort zone like grows and grows and grows, and you don't just get scared and then shrink back. So like one way that I did that when I was, especially like when I, because I used to do more wedding work and I transitioned more into murals. And so when I made that switch, like I knew I wanted to grow more in the murals direction. So part of expanding my comfort zone was like reiterating what my services actually are that I want to do to people who maybe knew me in a different context. So like wedding photographers that I had worked with, I just started having conversations with them saying like, hey, I'm actually scaling back my wedding work, but I would like love to connect with you in the future if you ever need a mural. And now down the road, I've worked with so many people who've been referred to me from those wedding photographers because they're working with people who are in like a million different industries. So you just never know, kind of like what Logan said about like that spider web effect, like what that connection is going to be. And so much for me of like getting outside of my own comfort zone had to do with mindset, like labeling myself as a muralist. Because, when you get hired at a job, like I used to work in restaurants, I was hired as a server. So I would tell people I'm a server, like that was my job title. But when you run your own business, it's like a self-appointed job title, So to have that mindset and that confidence and that comfort saying like, this is who I am, this is what I do. And, if I meet someone who's like a banker, I'm never questioning like, well, are you a banker? So just like having that confidence that like, if I tell someone I'm a muralist, they know I'm a muralist and they're going to pass that along. So a lot of like getting outside of my comfort zone had to do with mindset, which I'm really grateful that like Logan has helped me a lot with, kind of navigating those different circumstances, and then like how to even use that to touch back on like past industries that I've been a part of and how those networks can help me, like from my restaurant days, from my wedding working days. And actually, I did just see a question in the chat here that I was going to address, and I'm sure Logan can get to as well. But someone just said, like, how do you navigate, if your past connections aren't people that you want to work with necessarily? I would say for me, like, I definitely have people in the wedding industry that I don't care to work with again. But that experience is super helpful and like allows me to relate to people still. So like if you come from an education background or if you were in a school system, like you can still use that as a connection for teachers that you meet, and say like, I was like in a school system as well. I know what that looks like, and here's like how I could serve you now. It doesn't necessarily have to be a literal like individual that you're connecting with, but it can be experience that you're connecting with to help relate to a future client.
I love that. So good. And yeah, and we'll definitely dive into any other questions that people have towards the end with the as much time as we have, and we can definitely talk about that one more. I love love Molly's perspective on that. I think it's just so powerful to understand that this networking stuff, it is actually very doable. And as we said, you can do it in small steps. Right. So, getting out of the comfort zone doesn't need to be a big, scary thing. It's going, okay, what is the small thing we can do first to build up a bit more comfort, to get some more experience as well. So love all the wedding examples as well are so powerful. We're going to talk through, some more practical ways to build connections, and, particularly around, how to actually connect with the right people as well. So, something that I do really encourage and recommend is to actually consider trying to do one networking event per month. Now, it doesn't actually matter what that is, but this is a way to actually just expand your network. And when I say networking event, look, it could be online, it could be offline. This technically counts as your one for the month, right? So this could be, a way to connect with some more people. It could be other artists, other creatives. It could be ideal clients, but it could even just be a chance to connect with new people. It could be a sporting related event. So, it's really making sure that you are meeting new people in your life. As you go about in your life, is like, those are the people that may then refer you to someone that you might work with in 6 months' time, right? So actually having an effort to make sure that you are, attending some sort of something once a month. Can you do it more? Can you do it once a week? Yeah, sure. If you want to do more, that's fantastic. But actually, part of getting outside of that comfort zone might be doing something that you haven't done before, connecting with new people as well. And, I do think one thing that COVID gave us, a lot of challenges with COVID, but one thing is that, there is a lot more online opportunities these days. So, there is ways where you can literally, like today, you can connect with a bunch of cool people from the safety, the comfort of your own home, right? And, you can interact to the level that you want to as well. And if you feel completely overwhelmed by it, you can just leave it really easily. You don't have to leave a physical building, right? You don't need to pretend something's happened. It's you can just drop out, it's fine. So, this is where, connecting with people is an important part of it. Look, social media is also just a great way to network and connect with people, right? It's a pretty easy way to do that. Obviously, we've got, tools like Instagram's DMs, direct messages. If someone follows you on Instagram, send them a message. Be like, hey, so great to connect. Awesome. Appreciate what you're up to. I was just checking out your page. I'm very cool. Right. That can be it. And actually, there's now a small personal connection there. And it's kind of what Kathleen was talking about before as well, around the nurturing piece of it as well, because that person may then become a client later, or they may know someone. But if you never have talked to them, never direct message them, it's going to be a lot harder to ask for things like connections, referrals, recommendations later, right? So maintaining that's really important. And, I do think we've got some great tools for this. Yes, you've got things like email, but even things like Instagram is quite informal. So you can have these informal DM conversations as well that can sometimes lead to further conversations that sometimes lead to them referring you someone or leading to work as well. So, this is something that I think people really underutilize actually, is, some of these different tools. The other thing I'll share around building these connections and building deeper connections is just to get curious, right? Just to get curious about the people around you, right? And actually, let's say you're, at, a party with some friends, you've got a cousin's birthday, well, whatever's going on, is get curious about the people around you, not with a targeted laser of I want this person to become a client and maybe I'm doing this for my business. It's no, just get genuinely curious about the people in your world, learn about who they are and what they do, and get curious, right? I think often when we connect with new people, it's kind of very much, it's the classic, how's the weather, what we're up to, those things there. But can you go a bit deeper and ask them, so what do you get up to outside of work? What do you do in your spare time? Or what do you do for work? Getting curious about other people deepens those connections as well, right? So, I think we don't do enough of that. We don't ask enough questions, right? And people love talking about what they do and their hobbies and the things that they're excited about. Those of you that have children, right? That's a whole topic of conversation for sure, right? So really understanding that getting curious about other people around you is just going to build those deeper connections, and they're more likely to be, whether it's the next client or it could be the person that refers you your next client as well. Once again, the more you can do this in a more effortless, natural way, kind of the better, rather than that targeted lock of right, this person's going to become that. It's hey, go in with just actually a connection in mind of like, hey, we'd love to connect with someone else. So another tip that I'd really recommend around this is it's basically getting good at talking about what you do. Right. So a lot of people, when you say, oh, what do you do? They kind of talk it down. They're like, oh, well, I'm kind of like a, I do a bit of illustration stuff. It's not really that big of a deal, blah, blah. Like we talk ourselves down. We see people doing that all the time, right? Actually being really proud and being really excited about this thing that you genuinely are passionate about, right? And being like, oh, so actually I'm an illustrator. I do this here. I love this here. Being able to actually pitch yourself is important. And, something that we get our clients doing is actually creating more of a professional pitch. Now, it's pretty rare that you're going to have to do like a Dragon's Den style professional pitch where you stand up somewhere and do like a speech about your business. Like that's actually pretty rare that you would ever have to do that. However, you learning how to talk about your business in a format allows you to then talk about it informally as well. So when you do connect with someone at some sort of event, you can, really bring out and be like, oh, well, I work with these sort of people. This is the sort of stuff they do. Here's a current client. Like you can kind of do it in a bit more of an effortless, natural way. Most people, don't have enough clarity around what they're doing in the first place. So getting clear about what you're doing, who you're doing it for, what is the types of creative work you do, what are the things that you're excited about with that, and talk about those things because, people do need to know what you do if they're going to be a potential client or if they're going to refer you to someone as well. So, one of my favorite places to practice talking about my business was with my late grandmother, right? So as I was in the early years of my own business, I used to go and hang out with her and she'd always be like, oh, give me the pitch. I want to hear what you're up to right now with the business. And I didn't really realize until years later that she was just really helping me by being really curious herself, but also helping me to practice talking about the business. Right. And, in this amazingly supportive environment, so powerful that gift that she gave me of being able to actually just practice talking about it so that when I was talking to someone that could be a potential client is like, I've done this pitch so many times before in different ways to my grandmother, right? Amazing. So, it's really about sometimes practicing these things, knowing that you're probably not going to have to do a Dragon's Den style thing. But even just having a bit of a format like that, it's going to allow you. So when you informally do that, you can also add those things in as well. Kathleen, would love to hear some of your thoughts around this one as well in terms of, practical ways to build connections and thoughts around what I've said.
Yeah, this is all very fresh for me because when I moved from Kansas City to Portland a couple of years ago, I felt like I sort of was, I had built kind of this community. I was very connected. People knew me in the area. And I felt like even though I could still obviously keep those people because my business is online, I was like, okay, I want to try and build that community here. So I've been kind of doing it recently, which means I've been kind of trying to do a little bit more in person. And what I've found is that I really look for opportunities that might just not be exclusively stand and chat networking events. That's a little bit too far out of what I, like to do. But there's places where my ideal client might just show up otherwise. I've taken classes and I've gone to conferences and there's sort of events here in Portland that incorporate trivia or game nights for creatives or small business people. So if that kind of terrifies you going in person, looking for ways where you can maybe have an activity or have something else to talk to those people with, and then you can kind of move into, I think Logan said, being curious about other things and then moving into here's what I do. I found that that's really helpful. And I think that a lot of people too are craving that kind of in-person connection post-COVID. So, if that's one way to take a small step outside your comfort zone is just taking a class somewhere where you might get to interact with new people, that could help. And I think it's sort of double-sided because you don't want to discount just going to creative events, because I've been hired by a lot of other creatives. I think when you think oh, I'm just going to talk to my ideal customer, even if that person isn't necessarily a creative, I've gotten so many referrals and stuff from other designers who are I don't have time to take on this project, or I don't have any illustration skills. Can you help out with this? So I think don't discount the creative community just because you might see those people in your head as competition. Those may be people who need your specific skills. But also if you are wanting to maybe work with small businesses, or I know if you're a muralist, you might want to work with physical locations and stuff, finding out where those people are going and trying to go to stuff like that as well. So I think I remember someone saying that like they would go to like sports conferences or something because they wanted to work with like people who worked in sports. And it's like, oh yeah, like there are small business, there's like chamber of commerce stuff if you're wanting to work with like small businesses. I'm in a woman in food group online, and there's only a couple creatives, and it's mostly people, you know, writing cookbooks, working in restaurants or working in food media, food, like going to like food festivals, connecting with people like that. I was just hired to do a logo by someone that I bought soup from at like a little pop-up because I just like was talking to her, and we exchanged Instagrams, and she's like, oh my God, your art's amazing. So like, you know, anywhere where you can kind of go out, connect with other people, especially thinking about your target audience and where they might be hanging out or what kind of professional development stuff they may be doing, and trying to get your foot in there. Another thing that's really helped me for in-person stuff, because I know that's kind of the biggest, scariest one, is I have a interesting business card. So my business card is just a sticker sheet with like my information on it. And I found that it kind of having that starts a conversation about like, wow, you made this, like you're really talented. Love to hear that. And it's sort of usable, so it won't get lost in their like wallet the same night. And it's sort of like a mini portfolio. So just thinking about maybe even ways. I met a guy who had like a toothbrush as his like business card, like thinking of ways that you can sort of show your creativity when it does come down to like the, you know, let's exchange information, let's exchange business cards, like again, just making it feel a little bit less awkward, because, you know, it's much less awkward for me to hand out my work than it is for me to just say, email me. So that's been really helpful for me as well. And the other thing I'll mention is just that online is totally as valid as in person. And I find that like kind of a mixture of both is really important to me. Meeting people in person, then like maintaining that connection online. One of my favorite things to do is productive scrolling. So I just like, when I need a break from working, I just kind of like get on LinkedIn or Instagram with the intention of just sort of seeing like what people are up to. I'll like save names of art directors that I see, or, you know, I'll look for whether someone like changed jobs. I recently got a contract because someone I worked with in the past changed jobs, and I was like, I've worked in that industry before. I'm going to like reach out and say like, if you need any freelancers, let me know. And he did within the next couple of months. So it scratches that itch to just like kind of relax while still technically like networking and, you know, doing something kind of productive. But, you know, yeah, shooting DMs to people, that kind of thing. All just very like easy ways. I feel like there's like the high lift, which is like going to networking events, and then there's like easy, which is like kind of online. But yeah, just I think there's a lot of ways to do it that aren't just that kind of traditional like go and hand out your business card kind of thing. And I like to kind of think of it in that way, and yeah, try to go to like one networking thing a month. Yeah.
I love it. That toothbrush story always makes me laugh so much as well, Kathleen. It's so good. And the soup story, they're both amazing. So it's, you know, and I think part of it is, yeah, like you're all creative people. So there is creative ways to figure these things out, right? Like the sticker sheets, the toothbrush, like actually connecting with people in different ways is part of that. Hey, one thing around connection I'd love to do is I'd love everyone to drop their Instagram link in the chat. Please get the URL. So like literally open up your browser, grab the URL and drop it in here. Both Molly, Kathleen, theirs in as well. Also Celeste from my team will drop our Flammable Entrepreneur link too. If we're not connected with you, we'd love to do that. So, but yeah, everyone go and grab your URL, pop it in the chat, and then go through and actually click and follow everyone here, because this is a great way, once again, to network. This is what we're talking about is, you know, there could be someone here that could be the next person that's going to refer you some work, or, you know, even could become an accountability buddy, could actually be a connection in business as well. Or, yeah, it's so true, Kathleen. Like, you know, people get to meet people through these calls, which is so important as well. So looks like everyone's dropping in their links. And I know we're already, myself and Celeste are already having some chats to some people here. So we'll definitely make sure we're connected with you and have some DM chats as well, if we haven't yet. So everyone's popping that in. I love it. Okay, so we're going to carry on through the different things we're covering. So we've talked a lot about this idea of reimagining and thinking about networking differently and really changing how you think about it and also making it work for you. Right. So as we said, like, it doesn't have to be in person. If you actually want it to be online, networking, great. There's so many different opportunities to do that, right? Whether it's coming to things like this, whether it is joining other different networking groups, or getting on in terms of other groups like the food group Kathleen was talking about. Actually, you know, being a part of different things, there's lots of ways to do it. Yes, as we talked about before, the comfort zone is an important part of it. So just, you know, do test yourself as you go along. Like, how can I get slightly more outside that comfort zone? Networking, connecting online can actually just be great practice for networking and connecting in person as well, right? So that is a good way to, you know, kind of grow that comfort zone as well. So, you know, networking, and Kathleen and Molly have both touched on this as well, but like, it doesn't have to be like super formal. I think that's a really important piece of it. I think, you know, when we think of the word networking, as I said at the start, like, I think we really picture like being in this like awkward room with like a bunch of like business corporate people in suits and suit outfits. Like, it's, you know, it's kind of like, oh, you know, that's for most of you, I'm sure that's not an environment that you want to be in. And it's not an environment I want to be in. I'm like, whatever, right? Like, there's so many other ways, and so much of it can be more informal, right? So there's opportunities to network informally all the time. Kathleen gave a great example. Like, Kathleen was actually networking with someone that she brought soup from, right? Like, that was networking. At the time, would we like call it networking? Maybe not. It's just, you're just connecting with someone, you're buying soup, right? It's what you're doing, right? So, you know, understanding that as you live your life, there's opportunities to connect with people around you. And I think the more we can rephrase networking to be connecting, because that's all it really is. That could be connecting for other things in your life, for other reasons, but it also could be for potential clients and business as well. So the more we can think about this stuff as connecting, the easier it gets to be as well. And, you know, opening up to that idea that networking is actually just connecting makes it a lot easier as well. So Molly, would love to hear some of your thoughts around, you know, these ideas and reimagining networking as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I had a very antiquated idea of networking when I started like working with you, and very much the like almost like a speed dating sense of people in a room. Like, what can you give me? Okay, next. What can you give me? Okay, next. You know, and it's like that is not at all what I associate with networking anymore. And I don't want anything to do with that kind of networking. So really focusing on like the connection side of it. And one thing that Logan talks a lot about, and Kathleen even kind of touched on too with like some of the jobs that she's gotten recently, is that networking, when I do it today and I'm like making these connections with people, I'm really thinking about it as like sowing the seeds. I'm not necessarily giving or getting like an actual job in that immediate exchange, but I've met people that like we had a real genuine conversation, and I told them what I did and I heard about what they did. And a year later, they showed up in my inbox and I was like, I forgot I even met you. And I've gotten like very big jobs through that kind of thing. I mean, even again, going back to like tapping into your current network, like my husband's cousin I was at a barbecue with, and he told me about his friend who like stumbled into this job of restaurant design, and I hadn't seen my husband's cousin in a long time, and I was telling him like, oh, I actually like just did a mural in a restaurant, and then lo and behold, like 3 weeks later, I got an email from his friend saying like, oh, I'm designing a new space, I'd love to like have you see it. So just like keeping that at front of mind too, because like Kathleen touched on too, like people change jobs too. So networking doesn't necessarily have to mean like, okay, this is like the box that you're put in forever. It can just mean like follow up on even these like parasocial relationships that you have on Instagram or something, and be like, if you see that someone like switched jobs, you can say like, hey, congrats on the new job. Like, looks like you are switching to a new, actually, this is a really relative example. I had a friend who switched schools recently. She's a teacher, and she switched to a school that was in a brand new building. And so I connected with her and I was like, hey, it looks like you're in a new building. Like, if you need something on your walls in there, let me know. And I wound up doing a mural in that school. So people, you know, jobs change, positions change, budgets change. So just being intentional about like sowing the seeds when you're making those connections, and just remembering that like it's not necessarily going to be an immediate exchange of services. It's really just connecting, being genuine, being open about what you do, and just kind of staying up on different opportunities for how you can help each other just through learning about each other.
I love what you said there, Molly, around like the intentional part of it, because I think, and this is, you know, a big message for what we're talking about today on the webinar, is like, it's how to be intentional about doing these things, right? So Molly, like at that barbecue, like happen to talk to people. It's like, well, no, like you were intentional. You were like, hey, I do want to share. I want to get comfortable at sharing what I do with other people. Now, it didn't need to be, you didn't stand there, I'm sure, and do a pitch at the barbecue. Hey, everyone, I'm doing this thing here. It's just like, we're like, oh, yeah, no, here's one up to him, just working on this mural project. And like, it's a very natural conversation as well. But I think, you know, it's helping everyone here recognize that like there is some proactiveness and intentionality that needs to go into these things as well. Right. So Molly gave the great example of like, yeah, someone who switched schools is like, you still had to actually message them and get outside the comfort zone by not just saying like, hey, that's awesome, which you can say. You're allowed to just be like, hey, love what you're up to and love that you switched. That's cool. And that can be a seed of connection that reminds them that you exist and about your work, for sure. But you can also take things a step further and be like, hey, there's a wall there. You know, just to let you know, I do those sorts of things. I do murals on, you know, new walls, right? Like, so that there's kind of that intentionality to that next step as well. And like still done in a probably pretty informal way too, which I absolutely love. We're going to talk a little bit about networking, not just being for extroverts. And Kathleen's going to give us some really good thoughts around this as well. And I think, you know, once again, that word networking, we're like, oh, like that's for like those extroverted people who are like, yeah, love talking to people, love like talking to big groups of people, love getting on stage and all those things there. And, you know, I think it's so important to recognize that you can network as an introvert, as an extrovert, as anyone, right? We put ourselves in all these different boxes, but the reality is you can network in the ways that work for you. Yes, getting outside that comfort zone can be part of it. But I think just, you know, around introverts, it's like introverts tend to be really good at building deep connections. Right. So they can, you know, the reality is, sorry, the extroverts there is like, it's very easy to build, you know, lots of shallow connections as an extrovert. Right. Whereas as an introvert, it's often easier to build deeper individual one-on-one connections, which is a really, really powerful thing to recognize as well. So, you know, this actually is a superpower in connection because people actually do tend to trust introverts more as well. So there's some really interesting pieces to this. And the main message here is that, hey, you can network, you can connect no matter who you are, and you can connect in so many different ways. So I know, Kathleen, I'll leave you to talk more about this because you've got some great perspectives from yourself as well. So I'll over to you.
Truly personal experience. Because I've definitely never been the kind of person to like chat up everyone in the room or go up to people unprompted. And I've always kept a very small, like tight circle. And I thought that in that way, like I might not be very good at it. But like Logan said, it's not necessarily about like, you know, you want to sow the seeds wide, but it's not necessarily about making like the biggest network possible. It's kind of about the quality of those connections you can build and kind of strengthening that web. And I think one thing that introverts can be really good at is kind of quickly identifying like a good connection. And when there's something there, whether it's kind of a friend or a business connection, we're good listeners and we tend to trust our gut. And we kind of carefully choose where to invest our time and energy in because we don't have nearly as much of it as, you know, people who, you know, are energized by kind of talking and, you know, connecting with other people. And I think when we do invest that time, it really shows, and we don't spread ourselves so thin that we can't kind of keep track of who we know or where they're at, and what they're up to. So we don't need to worry about the fact that we, you know, didn't get 100 business cards at the conference. Like if we have a couple genuine conversations with people, that's okay. And you don't need to push yourself to be more like the extroverted side of things. I think it's important to see the value in the energy that you're able to invest so that you don't burn yourself out. And if you spend all the time anxious about how much more you could be doing and like, oh my God, there were so many cool people in there. Like, oh, I didn't talk to so-and-so, I should have. I've had that thought so many times of like missed opportunity. But I think if you spend too much time thinking about like how much more you could do, you'll miss those connections right in front of you and what they could offer. And I think it's a perspective that works. It's definitely worked for me in taking that pressure off to be the person who has talked to everyone in the room. By the end of the night has really made it like a much less stressful and easier process. And it's allowed me to invest time in what I like to do, which is building those sort of slower connections or, you know, finding, you know, people that match my energy, as well as leaning on people that I already trust. So it also feels good to be on the receiving end of that as well. So I think just trying to put yourself in people's shoes and like understand that like you don't have to be, you know, chatty Cathy to everyone all the time. But a couple practical tips I think that have helped me as an introvert is, again, just networking with people you know first. Obviously, it's not the end all be all, but if that's where you start, that's great. Finding a networking buddy or a hype person has been like really helpful to go to these events. Or like I have friends that will just like, whenever we meet people, they'll just be like, Kathleen's an incredible artist. And I'm like, if you can find people like that to just like hype you up a little bit, because then, you know, it kind of opens things up. Having extrovert friends can help. Or if, you know, those things are still a little bit too much for, you know, where you're at, just spend your time online. There's so much you can do faceless, and it's totally fine. I've made so many connections. A lot of my clients I've never met in person. So it's okay to start small, kind of start at the beginning of your comfort zone if online is safer for you. So yeah.
I love it. It's, you know, it's so powerful to get Kathleen's perspective on this, right? Because, you know, this is a real world lived experience as well. It's like, it's, you know, we've got to often get beyond just the ideas and talking about these things and understand, like, how can things work for people as individuals? Like, how can networking work for lots of different types of people? Yes, maybe the extroverts, but also the introverts in the room as well, which is so powerful. So I love that. We are coming towards the end of the webinar. We will address a couple of questions we've had sent in if we have time as well. And we will also go through one more round of a few tips and extra things. So, you know, something we've talked a lot about is obviously connections, and really the idea is we also need to take those connections to become clients, right? So connections are powerful, absolutely, but there's some things that you can do to kind of take them further and actually turn those connections into opportunities. So first thing we've already talked about a lot is, yes, being proactive and intentional. So sharing your details, right? Sharing your contact details. I think this is something that people struggle to do. They might have a really nice connection, could be one-on-one, could be with several people at an event, online, offline. And then afterwards, they're like, oh, that person was amazing. And you're never going to see them again. And you never shared contact details. So yes, you've got to get out, but outside the comfort zone and be like, hey, like, we'd love to exchange Instagram. Like, right. I think Kathleen mentioned that when she was having soup, she got chatting and they ended up exchanging Instagrams, right? Like, there was that connection point, so that person now has Kathleen's details. She was they were able to like look into more information for that, of like, hey, like, what is this person up to? They loved your art. Fantastic. That turned into something. We've got the example there of Molly being proactive and actually going that step further of, hey, you know, just so you know, I do murals and I love working with these sorts of things. So, you know, actually taking those connections, being proactive, getting outside that comfort zone is important as well. You know, part of it sometimes is doing what we call that is the ask, right? Which is, you have connections, you have people. Sometimes you've actually got to go out to them and say, hey, hope you're doing really well. I just want to let you know, I've got some availability coming up over the next couple of months. Do you know of anyone that might potentially be interested in working with a XYZ, a muralist, graphic designer, an illustrator? Do you know of anyone in your network? Like, doing that ask is really, really important. Now, important thing, Kathleen's mentioned this already, is you've got to nurture that relationship, right? If you come out of nowhere and you're just like, hey, like, I haven't spoken in 2 years, but do you know of anyone? They're going to be like, hello, like, let's talk first, right? It's, you know, it's important that you do maintain and nurture these relationships so that when you do want to do that bigger ask, you can do it, right? They're like, oh yeah, you know, you're just chatting to them 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago. So it's more of a natural thing. It's not coming completely out of nowhere. But this is also getting outside of that comfort zone as well. So maintaining those connections, but also doing that ask. Getting people like following your Instagram, or if you do have an email newsletter, are also just great ways to keep them in your world of knowing what you're up to as well. And there could be asks on there as well, right? So you could be DMing them, or you could be putting something on your Instagram saying, you know, currently looking for opportunities in September, or I have availability for December, or currently booking murals for November, or whatever it is. Like, you can share those things as a post on Instagram. Now, if those people are following you and you've encouraged them to follow you, well, they're potentially going to end up being a client, right? So these are just some extra pieces around what you can do to take that extra step as well. Molly, we'd love to hear a couple of your thoughts around this as well and reflections.
Yeah, just a couple of like practical tips related to that, of like turning it into opportunity. One is just be organized about it. Like in my like in my email inbox, I have a label that just says soft leads. So if I get an inquiry for a mural and I send my response and then they get back to me and they say like, oh, it's actually not in our budget right now, or we've changed our mind, I keep it in the soft leads box. And like every 6 months I go back and I follow up and I just say like, hey, I know this wasn't in the budget last time. I just wanted to like stay on your radar. If anything has changed, let me know. Just like a real soft, intentional circle back can always, like, it doesn't, no one's gonna be mad that you do that. And it just helps you kind of stay organized. Also, like with past clients to get referrals, I have a little survey that I've put together for my murals. So once they've had their mural for 6 months, I'll send them a survey. And then it's just like a really quick, like 8-question survey that's like, what have you noticed? Like more foot traffic or more like social media tags, any additional comments. And then in that email, I also just have an ask for like referrals in there too. So just, yeah, kind of just being organized around those intentions. And then I guess last like practical tip I would say is like, don't be afraid to make suggestions to like partner with people, or like just because you haven't heard that an opportunity is there, that doesn't mean you can't suggest it. So I've really benefited from a designer that I've worked with on a handful of projects now, and she had designed a project that I came in on and I really liked how that project went. And so I just told her when it wrapped up, like, you know, if you ever need murals again, or even just like consultations with things, like I would love to work with you again. This was great. And we've worked together a lot now. So just being really open to like suggesting things to people too, because sometimes they might even be thinking that as well. So it never hurts to just throw something out there, even to like collaborate or just with other creatives.
I love that. I think, you know, putting it out there, putting that positivity out there of like, hey, I enjoyed working with you. Hey, I would love to keep working with you. It also just gets them thinking about like, oh, what could we do next? Right? Because yeah, they might have enjoyed working with you, but it's actually going that next step to getting it in their mind of like, what could this look like next? Because they're also thinking about a million other things right now. They're thinking about, what do they need to cook for dinner? What are they doing here? What's the plans for their weekend camping trip? Whatever. Like, you know, they've got a whole lot of other things on their mind. So actually taking that step to be like, hey, like, do you have any opportunities coming up? Or like, I'd love to keep working with you. What other things is so powerful as well. What we are doing is we're coming to the end. I do want to chat about Kat's question there briefly as well. But just a reminder around that survey, I would love to get on some calls with people here as well. So I'm going to pop that survey in the chat again, in case you didn't grab that, pop that open, have it in the background so you can work on that today. And yeah, honestly, would love to get connecting. We're going to send out a link with the recording. Those of you that couldn't watch this live as well, absolutely do the survey too. I just kind of wanted to touch on what Kat said here earlier in the call as well around, you know, basically this idea of perhaps having a previous network, or your current warm network, or your past warm network is kind of like people that you're not excited about talking to or connecting with. You know, they are, you know, no longer connecting with your brand voice, right? So we've got some good examples in the chat there. But I think, you know, part of it here is you utilize what you do have, but also you recognize the need for new connections. And this for Kat here, and Molly talked a bit about this as well, is like, for you, Kat, it might be, sorry, Kate, it might be a case of you needing to actually connect with new people, right? So kind of like when Kathleen moved cities, right? Like Kathleen had to put those efforts in to connect with new people and new networks. So you may find, yes, you don't kind of have that like bonus of the current or previous network and connections, but you've got to put that groundwork in to connect with new people, right? So that's sometimes part of it. If you move city, you know, we often speak to people who are, you know, living in places where they didn't grow up, so they don't necessarily have those, you know, longer personal connections, for example. That's okay, but it means you're going to have to do that legwork in a way of connecting with new people where you are as well. And, you know, part of that is, yes, get outside of the comfort zone as well. So there we go. I love it. Honestly, so lovely to connect with everyone. It's been such a blast doing this, Molly and Kathleen. Honestly, it's been awesome as well. And yeah, absolutely. I love the survey mention. I actually connected with Molly through Kathleen, which is great. So we've got this nice connection there. We see that all the time happening too. Lovely to have this call and this webinar today. Hope to connect with more of you in the future as well. Thanks, Kathleen. Thanks, Molly. It's been so good, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Take care, everyone. We're going to wrap things up there, and we'll see everyone another time. Awesome.
Bye.
Take care.